When Elizabeth Walton's curiosity led her to the old family mansion, she could never have imagined that her research into the Walton fortune and secrets would plunge her into an unimaginable nightmare. As she uncovered ancient documents, she came across clues of a dark pact sealed by her own ancestors, a promise made to forces beyond human understanding. What started as a simple quest for the truth soon turned into a terrifying journey, where each revelation pushed her deeper into a mystery that threatened her very sanity. And when the doors of the past finally opened, Elizabeth realized she had summoned something far more dangerous than she could control.
I have always known that my family's empire was filled with secrets. From a young age, the rumors about the Walton legacy intrigued me, but also scared me. My grandmother, the last to have contact with Sam Walton before his death, always avoided the subject. "Some things are better left unknown," she used to say. But over the years, I began to realize that there was more behind the scenes than the success stories everyone knew. The day I began searching for answers, the phone rang. It was my lawyer, informing me that he had found an old file of documents at the bottom of a company safe. Documents marked with my grandmother's seal. That was the starting point. They had been kept from me for a reason. It wasn't by chance that these papers had never been mentioned in family meetings, or in the official histories of the empire. I knew I should have been prepared for what I would find, but no one could have prepared me for what I saw. The documents were dated from 1950, shortly after the opening of the first store. The first page was almost illegible, but as I turned the pages, the message became clearer. Back. There was no other explanation. The word sacrifice appeared several times, mixed with symbols I could not decipher. Something terrible had happened back then for my family's fortune to be built. The place where it all began, the first warehouse, was now abandoned. It was an isolated building, far from the bustle of modern stores. I knew I couldn't ignore it any longer. If something was happening in the shadows of our empire, I needed to understand it. I decided I would go there. When I arrived, the air felt thick, heavy. What I hadn't expected was how disturbing the silence of that building was. There was no usual sound of machinery or activity that we normally hear in stores. It was deserted, and the feeling that something was about to happen was almost palpable. I walked down the main hallway, which still smelled of aged wood and cement. At the end, a door with a rusty lock seemed to call my attention. I hesitated for a moment, but something pushed me to open it. The door creaked as I moved it, revealing a stack of old documents and yellowed photographs. But more than that, there was something darker. In the center of the pile, a letter was highlighted, with a signature that seemed to move before my eyes. The letter spoke of promises fulfilled, and mentioned the need for annual sacrifices. The most terrifying part was the repeated mention of my family's name. I could no longer deny what was before me. My family had done the unthinkable to ensure its success. As I tried to understand what this meant, I felt a shiver run down my spine. The door behind me slammed shut. I was no longer alone. Something or someone was waiting for me there. The sound of the door slamming shut was what pulled me out of my trance. Fear took over me in an instant. I didn't know what was behind me, but I knew I was no longer alone in that dark building. The feeling of being watched gripped my chest, as if something or someone was surrounding me. I took a deep breath, trying to shake off the anxiety, and turned back to the stack of documents. With a trembling hand, I began flipping through the yellowed pages. The words seemed clearer now, but the more I read, the heavier the feeling became that this knowledge was not meant to be uncovered. What shocked me most was a letter dated 1952. It spoke about renewing the pact, something I couldn't quite understand, but at the same time it left me intrigued. The word renew was no mistake. It was clear, as if it was being repeated to ensure it wasn't ignored. The following words mentioned an annual ritual, but what made me stop was the name of a place, an exact coordinate that didn't correspond to any street I knew. It was an isolated area, far from any urban zone. There was something so macabre about the moment, as if the very building was breathing with a life of its own. The air felt thick, and the hallways I had walked through earlier seemed to stretch, as if the house itself was expanding around me. With each step I took, the silence became more oppressive. Suddenly, a shadow passed quickly in front of me. It was too fast to be human, and a chill ran down my spine. I looked around, but saw nothing but the worn walls and the creaky wooden floor beneath me. I was starting to doubt my own senses, but the feeling that something was there, lurking, tormented me. I tried to ignore the growing paranoia and focused again on the documents. In the corner of the letter, a name jumped out at me. Abigail Walton. I knew she was one of the key figures in the history of our fortune, but I didn't understand how her name was tied to a pact with something so sinister. Abigail, apparently, had been responsible for maintaining the deal that Sam Walton had made years earlier. She had been involved in something that my parents and grandparents chose to ignore or hide. From that moment on, I realized that my quest for the truth wasn't just about wanting to understand my family's past. I was dealing with forces beyond my comprehension, forces that had been awakened by my curiosity. I was being called to something, but what? And who else knew about this? Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hallway. They weren't mine. I froze, fear now consuming me relentlessly. That sound, it was closer. I didn't know where to run or what to do. Whatever was watching me was getting closer. The sound of footsteps grew louder and louder, as if they were getting closer to me. My heart raced, and my breath became shallow. I was paralyzed, unable to react, with only the sensation that death was near. Fear enveloped me in a way I had never experienced before. And then a voice, low whispering but clear. "You shouldn't have come." The voice seemed to come from all directions, as if it were in every corner of the room. I looked around, trying to identify the source, but saw nothing but the shadows that had taken over the space. The light from my lantern flickered in my hands, reflecting off the worn walls, aged by time. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. "You shouldn't know," the voice continued, now closer. "They didn't want you to discover what really happened here." The words cut through the air like sharp blades. I didn't know what was happening, but something inside me knew that voice was not human. There was something supernatural involved, something my ancestors had done to ensure their wealth would never end. The truth was right in front of me, but it wasn't something I could easily comprehend. When I finally managed to move, the door at the back opened by itself. There was no turning back now. Something inside me knew the truth I was searching for was behind that door. Through the heavy silence, I entered what seemed to be an underground hall, completely immersed in darkness. The lantern flickered and went out, but I couldn't stop myself from walking further. As my eyes adjusted to the dark, I saw figures on the walls, drawings and symbols I had already seen in the documents, but now they were alive. It was as if the walls had been made to tell a story my grandparents and parents had tried to erase. But they failed. I was about to understand everything. In the center of the hall, an altar was set up. It was simple, but there was something grotesque about it, a feeling that it had been used many times. On top, a wooden box, locked with chains, seemed to call to me. Fear paralyzed me, but my curiosity was stronger. I knew that opening that box meant understanding what really happened to my family. When I finally managed to force open the box lid, what I found inside wasn't what I expected. A book, thick, covered in dust, with yellowed pages. The moment I touched it, a strange sound echoed through the room, and a blurry vision flooded my mind. What I saw was a ritual, the same pact from 1950. My family, sacrificing not only human beings, but part of their own soul to ensure their wealth and power. The Waltons had made a deal with forces beyond this world, something that required more than just material sacrifices. The box contained the record of the Walton soul, captured and preserved over the years, ensuring the immortality of their empire. The voice was now behind me. "You know too much." Before I could turn around, the air filled with immense pressure, and everything around me went dark. The last thing I heard was a low, dragging laugh echoing through the walls before everything disappeared into the darkness.
Disclaimer: this story is a work of fiction. All characters, events, and locations mentioned are products of the author's imagination and have no relation to real, living, or deceased individuals or events. Any resemblance to real individuals, families, places, or situations is purely coincidental and should not be interpreted literally. The actions, names, and circumstances described in the plot are created for entertainment purposes and do not reflect reality. The author and those responsible for this work do not intend to represent or portray any real situation, event, or person.